Is it good if they spend more on infrastructure?
I think we have to spend more on infrastructure. I think we have to spend a little in order, in the long run, to make a little more.
Spending on infrastructure is popular. New roads, better bridges, everyone likes that. And so politicians promise it all the time.
Rebuilding America's infrastructure. Our roads, our bridges, our rails, our ports, our airports, our schools, our power grids. We've got a lot of work to do out there, and we got to put folks to work.
Put folks to work? What's wrong with that? Well, plenty, says economist Ben Powell. What do you mean?
He's putting the cart before the horse here. So one sign, actually, of an economic illiterate is someone who lists jobs as a benefit of their policy. Jobs are a cost of a policy, not a benefit. The benefit is the good or service that society gets from that job being done. Let me give you an example from the private sector, John, and then we can compare that to a government job creation program. So your show here, right, the value of this show is that hopefully it's in people's living rooms tonight and they're enjoying watching it and getting some information too. But the cost is you've got people behind the camera here doing work. You know, your producers
But
have
it's good that I have a job.
But you're doing something that takes you away from other activities you'd rather be doing. I mean, you're hanging out with a boring economist here in the studio instead of doing something fun on of all days, your birthday, right? And here I am. You're a swell.
My birthday.
You're a swell guy. I like hanging out with you, but I've been away from home for 4 days. My little boy misses me. I'd like to be with him. Our employers pay us for bearing these costs to provide value to society. In the private sector, we have a profit and loss system that says, hey, if Fox makes money by bringing this show to people's house, that tells us that...
But back to infrastructure.
Okay, back to infrastructure. When listen, if the government should be doing infrastructure for jobs, we're building roads the wrong way, John. I don't know what they're doing with all this Caterpillar equipment. Obama should get rid of all of that and hand the people shovels and let them try to start clearing the land
That
with
would be even more jobs.
And forget the shovels, give them spoons, right? Think of how much work they'd have to do on their hands and knees to scrape together a little road. But in the end, right, the benefit to society would be the road, not the work that was done. Instead, everybody just had a lot more cost of doing work.
We want the infrastructure.
So if we want the infrastructure, you justify it by arguing for the benefits of the infrastructure, not for job creation.
Well, they do both. When President Obama talked about rebuilding America's infrastructure, it almost sounded like it was a new idea. But listen to him 5 years ago, and every year.
We are remaking the American landscape with the largest new investment in our nation's infrastructure. I am announcing a new plan for rebuilding and modernizing America's roads and rails and runways for the long term. We'll put more Americans to work repairing crumbling roads and bridges. So much of America needs to be rebuilt. We've got crumbling roads and bridges to put people to work as soon as possible on our most urgent repairs.
It's again and again. It's like a mantra, a chant.
Yeah, you know, one different definition of insanity, right, is trying to do the same thing again and again and expecting different results. Now, of course,
doesn't government have to build roads and bridges?
He argues for these things for like economic recovery, right? We had the reconstruction effort after the recession. If you had looked at Japan in the 1990s, they did tons of infrastructure projects to try to get out of their recession. It didn't work. In fact, we know we had a housing bubble here in the United States, or virtually everybody appreciates that now. But that means people and capital were pulled into the wrong sectors, too much in construction, housing, related industries. The good news is we didn't have to like shoot the people or burn the houses afterwards. What we had to do is reallocate them to other places in the economy. But these types of programs that force resources back into those industries prevent that needed recovery and reallocation, the cleansing after the recession.
And a lot of infrastructure never happened after the orgy of stimulus spending in 2009. Turned out that less was repaired than they'd planned, and unemployment rose from 8 to 9%. The president was asked, what happened?
Shovel-ready was not as shovel-ready as we expected.
Listen, so infrastructure is important, John, but why do we think government has a comparative advantage in producing infrastructure?
The private sector used to build most of the roads.
You know, as a percent of the economy at the time, the Colonial Turnpike system that was privately provided was larger than the Eisenhower interstate system when it came into being. And we don't have to go back to colonial times. Right now, there's a private company in France that constructs, operates 500 miles of private toll roads around France, and they do it more efficiently. In fact, we have examples in the United States. In California, there was SR 71 in California that was a private road constructed in the middle of a government highway, and they brought us innovations like electronic tolling with overhead cameras so that you don't have to stop at booths, flexible pricing so that in high rush hour times prices were higher. Now, of course, governments could do these things, but they don't have the profit incentive to, so they're not as innovative.
And they waste money doing it.
Always.
Well, thank you, Ben Powell. We'll try to rethink that next. I'll reduce our debt because it turns out cutting is good for us.